By going electric, the automotive industry has an opportunity to become a catalyst for change, as the EVs offer a road to climate neutrality. But electrification is really just a starting point. To achieve climate neutrality, the OEMs and supply chains alike need to embrace transparency and also communication on how to measure and communicate really the carbon footprint. And also leaders needs to lead the change, of course. With me here I have 3 leaders with me here on stage and 2 with me on Zoom. These esteemed panel discussion leaders here will discuss solutions we need to build a sustainable and resilient supply chain and how to create market for climate neutral materials and also technologies. So my name is Catarina Rolfsdotter-Jansson. I am moderator for We Don't Have Time, and I'm also chair of the independent think tank Global Utmaning. So now, it's my pleasure to introduce the panelists. Closest to me here I have Thomas Ingenlath, who's CEO of Polestar. I have Martin Pei, CTO of SSAB, and I have with me also Anders Kjærberg, global head of sustainability at Volvo Cars. So let's see if we can be joined here. Yes, we are. Excellent. The furthest to my side here is Rebecca Karlsson, who is a sustainability entrepreneur and business advisor and also author. And just to my left here is we have from Northvolt, Emma Nehrenheim, who is Chief Environmental Officer at Northvolt. So, wonderful to have all of you here on stage. And I'd like to start with you, Rebecca. You wrote this book. It's called Exponential Climate Solutions. And in this book you talk about the need for exponential climate transition and also the importance of setting moonshot goals for businesses in order for them to really future-proof themselves. But Rebecca, what do you really mean by this?
Yes, so to put it in context, we have entered the decade of climate action. Of course, 2030 global emissions need to be half compared to 2020. And no later than 2050, we should be able to wake up in the morning, make ourselves a cup of morning coffee, and global emissions should be literally zero. So the whole world economy should go totally fossil-free and climate neutral in just 3 decades. So instead of increasing emissions exponentially, we now need to decrease them exponentially. And this can, of course, feel very, very ambitious. Is it possible to do? But when we start looking around in society, we will see that the development is happening so much faster in so many other areas. If we look at the tech sector, for example, we have a wide range of technologies developing exponentially, following more or less Moore's law, so doubling in relation to price every 18 to 24 months. So if we were to cut emissions as fast as the technologies are developing, we will be down at 0 emissions in 5 years and 3 months and able to focus on other issues instead. And also, if we look further around in society, we'll also see that behavioral changes, social movements, trends can develop just as fast. So what we want to do now is, of course, to develop this type of exponential climate solutions that are at a very large scale cutting emissions. And to come back to the moonshots, this originally comes from when John F. Kennedy said that in just 10 years from now, we should have the first person on the moon. Technologies weren't nearly ready. No one knew how this would be possible. But 8 years later, so even ahead of time, the first person was on the moon. And today, when we talk about moonshots, we talk about these type of solutions that are scaling with 10x. So all the time becoming 10x better or more scalable. Rather than these like 10% better all the time solutions that business is usually more going for. So, and it's not 10 times harder to create the solutions that is scaling 10x, but it requires a totally different kind of foresight and thinking to really plan of where should we be a few years from now and how can we backtrack rather than just doing incremental innovations. So really thinking in disruptions, as we are seeing now in the outcomes also.
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca Karlsson. I'm turning now to Thomas from Polestar. While many other OEMs are busy signing, pledges here at the COP, And you are, you have chosen to join this panel as the only CEO, Thomas, because the other CEOs are busy at this other meeting, signing the COP declaration on accelerating the transition to 100% zero emissions, but cars and vans to 2040. So why is that? Why did you choose to be here and not there?
Yeah, well, it would be a bit pointless for the company Polestar as an electric car company to go and sign a paper. We don't produce cars with a combustion engine, and we really are on a complete different journey here. I mean, Rebecca explained we have a journey ahead with electric cars being the starting point. You mentioned this, Catarina. For us, the question of phasing out combustion engine cars, we kind of left that chapter of car industry already 3 years ago. And I think the full attention of the car industry, and here, of course, should be the next step, the journey that starts with the electric car and really making electric cars a real contribution to a sustainable future of mobility, and us wasting the time of trying to unite when we should phase out combustion engine cars. The big question really is, how can electric cars become less CO2 burdened? How can consumer charge with green energy? How can we get a supply chain that is supportive for CO2 burden that is getting lower and lower each and every year? So these are the real questions, and that's why I think time is better spent here than over in the other hall.
Well, Tom, thank you very much, Thomas. We're very happy indeed that you are here, of course. I'm turning now to Martin. Well, so far we talked about the big emitters and the need for decarbonizing supply chains quite a lot during this event, well, during the COP. And the fact that the SSAB has showed that it is possible to produce fossil-free steel is, of course, great news for all other actors too, to make sure that, well, everybody sees that it is actually feasible. So how do you see your role as an enabler for your customers, and also what is needed to create markets for climate neutral basic materials such as steel? Because there are other materials that need to follow suit.
Yes, steel is of course an extremely important material for the automotive industry, but also for many other industries. When we started our journey 5 years back, we had a conviction that we not only need to cut our own emissions in our, say, Scope 1, Scope 2, but we see also a need that our customers will need to have access to steel without a carbon footprint, like Polestar now. So we created the cooperation with LKAB Vattenfall, and we invested heavily in the research and development activities. So now, 5 years since we started, we have shown that technically the technology works. So our next step challenge is really to scale this up and produce at the quantities that our customers really are waiting for.
What do you think is the meaning for other actors in other materials apart from steel, that you're actually showing that this is possible?
I think that is an interesting aspect for sure, because steel is regarded as one of the hardest sectors to decarbonize. And what we have done with hybrid initiative, what we have shown this year with our trial deliveries to Volvo, who have made it into a vehicle, that shows that if we really jointly decide to take these breakthrough technology development steps, we can do it. And we see that this has inspired other steel companies around the world. This hopefully will also inspire other material producing industries to think out of the box and to dare to take the challenge, because climate can't wait. We need to do whatever possible to drive the change.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Martin. I'm turning now to Anders from Volvo Cars. Anders, how can we leverage LCAs in order to drive climate action and also to empower, again, customers to exercise their right to make informed choices when, for instance, purchasing a car?
Life cycle assessments is a very important tool for us in going to climate neutral company by 2040. It's important because it points at where the most important actions are, and it gives to the consumer a number on the total life cycle impact of a car. And we've done this, we do this for every car we announce, and there are a number of important learnings here. When we produce a BEV, 75% of the CO2 emissions, they are embedded in the steel, in the aluminum, and in the battery. So it tells us that that's where you got to start. And that's why we have close cooperation with SSAB and Northvolt, which will help us bring those emissions down. The other very important learning is that the renewable energy is so important to make BEVs realize the climate benefits. If you fuel your BEV with a car with electricity done from coal versus wind power, there's a 60% difference there. And that's a major difference that we must take into account. Mm-hmm. Another important learning is that when we ask our suppliers to specify for us what is the climate impact of your component, most of them don't know. So we are asking them to do this, and we even provide training for them to do that. So I think this is important for consumers. We hear from private consumers, they are more interested, it's coming. But what's more important, that's the professional buyers, the fleet buyers. They already require this from us. So this is a fundamental tool to come across.
Thank you very much, Anders. I'm turning now to Emma from Northvolt. Emma, how transparent is the battery industry at this point? And also, which are the key reasons for utilizing a well-calculated carbon footprint, when it comes to your field of work in battery production?
I think that a lot of this was just mentioned. It's incredibly important, just to start with, that we find some kind of labeling, and this is part of the new battery regulation proposal, to have this labeling of each battery, so you can clearly read out the footprint of the battery, and also clearly follow the advancement of footprint of the battery. I think that the industry is relatively transparent as of now. We need to be more transparent globally. It's a matter of data quality. As you know, we are now feeding data into the product environmental footprint that is held by DG Environment at the EU Commission, to be able to evaluate different batteries, different material streams, and so on. Quality of the material here needs to be way better. Now we are working on country averages, and what already mentioned now was the quality of the supply chain. We spend a lot of time understanding what each supplier has as a footprint, what is driving footprint, trying to differentiate between different materials. And to further develop this, we need a high level of transparency. And we need to bring in universities and institutes and other third-party auditors into this footprint calculations, not only on company level, but also on this database level, so that we can clearly understand the quality of the data being fed into this, and also to develop going further, to point at the weak spots, to understand what material needs to be moved to other areas, to bring in more renewable energy into which grids that are prioritized short term, and so on and so forth. So this, I think, is very, very important. We have to understand that carbon is only one of the 16 impact factor categories. So it's the first, it's the most important as of where we are now, but we are really setting the standard for all the coming 15 impact factors. So we are going now with a standardization of the carbon footprint declaration with the labeling, but we are also, setting the ground for biological diversity, land use, resource use, water footprint, and so on. So it's here now that we are starting, but this is going to be a very hard and important work going forward to make sure that the entire global planetary boundaries, whatever you will call it, is supported and protected when we transform this industry.
Well, thank you very much, Emma. I'm turning again to Anders here. Volvo has entered a strategic partnership with Northvolt, and you're also the first car maker, car producer that is using the SSAB fossil-free steel. Why have you entered these collaborations? And also, what role does really collaboration have in driving climate solutions, Anders?
Well, as I stated, 75% of the emissions from producing a BEV comes from the aluminum, steel and batteries, so clearly that's where you need to start. And we're very happy to have these agreements with these collaborators and companies. I just want to come back to what the representative from Northvolt said here on the EU directive. I don't think everyone has understood how significant, how revolutionary this directive really is in bringing transparency to the next level. Because we are asked to, throughout the value chain of a battery, make available, publicize that we are made sure that it's responsibly sourced, from what supplier, what amount, and so on, and publicly report this to the Commission only in 2 years. It is taking really transparency to a new level. And there are more directives to follow. So the Commission is really on this. It's part of the EU Green Deal.
Thank you, Anders. And Thomas, would you like to comment this? How are you working at Polestar with transparency?
Well, I would like to add the regulatory side is super important on one hand. The other thing is, and what we are working a lot with, is to actually get the consumer along that journey and to make the consumer aware that this is a big part of the new world, to not learn just, the technical figures of a car that you knew so far, but actually there's a new dimension that you will take into consideration when you discuss how great your car is. You will actually brag about those figures. And that's where we see a very positive way of influencing customer behavior to a more pro-sustainable future by just simply spurring that type of spirit that you not just because the law is asking for it, but because the consumer is actually enjoying that type of product that gives you that satisfaction. And one way how we do it, look at the milk package which is standing there, and what's written on it about information about what this piece of milk all contains, and that type of labeling and bringing really into the eye of the customer each and every material in the car. That's the way how we really try to make that as well in the customer mind a very positive, great journey.
Well, this is not easy, of course, and the trajectory further also for Volvo cars in this communication process to inform the customers. Rebecca initiated the exponentiality of it all that we really have to address. So how do we get the customers to exponentially understand that they really need to make these very well informed choices on this?
I think the automotive industry, and I think any company really has a responsibility to provide that information to consumers. I don't think that's done properly today. Of course, we can act on our own, and we are, both Polestar and Volvo and others. But we're also here again going to be pushed by the Commission. They have a directive on something about consumer information, because they are of the opinion that the general consumer in EU, they're misinformed or they are uninformed, and that must not go on.
I'd like to turn to Martin here for some comments on this, on the EU level decisions here. How important is this for the further transition in this field?
It is extremely important, this transparency of the carbon footprint all the way, for example, along the value chain, but also other aspects in the sustainability aspect. So this will push the whole value chain to work towards the right direction. Our ambition is very clear. We want to, together with our partners, LKB, Vattenfall, decarbonize the whole value chain. So starting from the iron ore mine all the way to steel we deliver to our customers, Volvo Cars and Polestar and others, so that we can provide the transparency so they can use in their next step declaration of product. We believe this is extremely good and important. It seems that the legislation, but also the public are asking for this development, which is positive.
Thank you. I'm turning now to Rebecca again. You're young still, but you have a long career in sustainability, and the focus, of course, is exponentiality. In terms of communication here, to reach the end consumer and to really be able to get people to understand the importance of transparency, the companies to understand the importance of transparency fully to increase the speed of this. What are your reflections?
I think my reflections are that what is happening now so much is that sustainability is very rapidly becoming a major business disruptor in a way that it hasn't been. So it's almost the same journey as companies has done in terms of digitization is now happening in relation to sustainability. And you can see it a little bit like if there is no supply at all, customers won't ask for it. But as soon as there is one alternative that is radically better, then why should you still hang on to the earlier option? And this is what we have seen in the development of electric cars. Of course, we couldn't ask for electric cars before there were any, but the development has happened so rapidly, and this will of course happen also in terms of transparency. Now it's very hard to ask for a fully transparent car, but as soon as someone does it very well, that will change things for the other majority very rapidly. So I think there is really a first mover advantage, of course, in setting the example. But as soon as someone sets the example, it will very rapidly follow after. And we can see so taking Volvo as an example, like opening up the 3-point safety belt, for example, like someone does it first and the whole other industry needs to follow. And we could easily see this also in terms of transparency. Once it becomes the norm, everyone else has to follow.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Comments? Here you go, Anders.
We're talking a lot about consumers. There are other stakeholders that want transparency. Financial market, increasingly so, and for us also important internally to make decision makers understand the significance of carbon reductions. And that's why we actually announced it today, that we are setting an internal price on carbon that we will use, 1,000 SEK per ton, to be used in guidance when we take decisions internally on investments, to make sure that our cars will be competitive also from a CO2 perspective in the future, because the cost of CO2 will go up. We will use it against suppliers to compare different alternatives, to value, to put a number, a monetary number on the embedded emissions. I think that will be a very effective tool to come across.
Thank you. And this was also recommended yesterday from Gabriel Wikström, the Agenda 2030 coordinator at the Swedish government, that every Swedish company or company in general should set their own price on carbon. Would you like to comment, Thomas?
Yeah, we talked about moonshot goals, and that's one moonshot goal that we actually set within the company Polestar, that we 2030 committed to have one car in production that actually leaves the factory gate with zero CO2 footprint, which by today's knowledge and standard is a moonshot goal. Yeah, indeed, we would not know how to achieve that goal completely today, but we strictly believe that, of course, in the course of the next years, these technologies will be developed and help us to reach that goal, and we are absolutely committed on making that possible.
Thank you very much, Martin.
Yes, I would just like to comment on the announcement today by Volvo Cars of setting internal price on carbon dioxide footprint, 1,000 kronor per ton. I think that's extremely positive for us, for the steel industry. This will make many boardroom decisions easier for us to make big investments. And here we see the first power of the first mover setting this standard. Really, we thank you for your really setting this on the market. Now we know that Volvo Cars is putting a price on carbon dioxide in this way. So hopefully this will drive a lot of say energy into the industry.
Thank you very much. I feel like I'm not really seeing Emma if you're waving to me here, semi behind my back. Would you like to add something?
No, I mean, I just want to comment on this transparency and the carbon dioxide.
Great, please do. Go ahead.
So, just short on that. I mean, when we talk about the consumers, it's about talking about trust. So, what we've learned in the car industry so far is that putting just numbers without being able to support that and without being fully transparent of where those numbers come from is very dangerous for the industry as a whole and for the future of the car industry. So if we want to do this and we want to prove to our customers, so the consumers, that this is being done right from the beginning, we have to show that there is a good quality of the data that we use in this labeling of the carbon dioxide footprint.
Thank you, Emma. Well, setting your own price on carbon is, we could say it's a policy, but what kinds of policies do you all need from decision makers to make this transition happen more quickly? Would you like to start, Thomas?
Now, obviously, the politicians really could play a big role. Setting officially a price on carbon, yes, that would be one big step. But even just when it comes to the question of supporting with green energy, making sure that in each and every country you actually have the access to green energy when it comes to the production, when it comes to the use phase of the product, there are big tasks ahead for the politicians.
Thank you, Thomas. Martin?
Yes, build up the renewable energy production, transmission, infrastructure. That is extremely important, especially for our plans to quickly as possible to transform our production technology to this new sustainable technology that is actually setting the timeline for us. So we really hope that this can support this transition all the way.
Thank you. Martin, what have you picked up so far? Are you feeling hopeful? Anders, you will get in this. Yes, of course. So Martin, are you feeling hopeful to what's coming out of this 2-week-long meeting here in terms of policies facilitating?
Yeah, there are quite a lot of say positive announcements from this COP. We feel at least compared with earlier similar occasions that this time things we get the feeling that the things start to change by real from now on. So positive so far.
Just a quick note before I turn to you, Anders. And I had the professor Johan Rockström on stage the other day, and he said, "Well, now at least it feels like we're all swimming in the same lane. We just need to swim faster." And he felt like at other COPs, he did not have the sense of businesses and negotiations. Well, representatives from the governments who were swimming in the same lane, but that was the what he picked up now. So, Anders, your reflections on the last question, please.
On governments in general?
Yes.
Well, first of all, as Thomas said here, making renewable energy available must be done. And that much more can be done there. Governments can also ask listed companies to commit to a climate neutral target by 2030. If you look globally, only 20% of major listed companies do that. Why should that be accepted? I mean, that should really be the norm. They can also ask companies to report publicly on their CO2 emissions. That's not done today. They can be much harder on that. And for our industry, I mean, they could really push an end date to the sales of fossil fuel cars. And there's much more. But today, at COP, I think there's been some achievements, yes. But if you go to the past, there's been 25 COPs with very little agreements. So it's so far up to today, I'd say it's been a disappointment on the action from governments. They can do much more. And I think COP26 is a good start.
Thank you very much. Well, the jury is really still out there on what's going to come out of this COP. So, Emma?
Yes.
What are your reflections on what you need in terms of policies from the higher levels of the decision makers?
I think that we are on a very on the right path here. I would love it if we would have a price on carbon also from a more sort of public perspective. I'm just sitting here right now calculating how much I will save for Volvo, given the new numbers I just got here. So that's very intriguing. So I just agree with the rest of the panel. Let's try to find a good way to estimate the value that we are creating by making sure that we are bringing down the footprint, and that we encourage the Commission to continue this path on the regulation.
And how about the end date that Anders suggested? The end date. I didn't think you would say no to that one. No, I didn't think so. None of us will, I assume, say no to that suggestion. But we just need to have to repeat it. So maybe, hopefully one day we will be heard on this one. So I'd like now to turn to Rebecca for a final question here from your perspective. What is your thoughts about the future for the automotive industry? And well, this is a big ask now. Advice to these business leaders here on how to navigate according to the exponentiality that you're really pushing all the time, which is crucial to get down to zero in time. And what would happen if all companies here at the COP set moonshot goals, well, like Polestar?
My reflection right now in general in the climate movement is that we are all of the time underestimating how fast the development is happening. And this includes people talking about how fast the development is happening. But like I started working with climate change 2006, so the build up to the COP, the Copenhagen COP. And of course, the whole business sector were somewhere completely different at that time. And then we have the shift around 2015 and the Paris Agreement. But only if we compare where the issue was only 1 year ago and now, it's radically different. And when we go like 1, 2, 5, 10 years ahead, it's not like we can draw out a linear line from now and moving onwards, because then we're thinking linearly again. So we need to understand that the development in the climate transition will be exponential from now, and the competition company to company will increase exponentially in relation to sustainability and climate. It comes down to, of course, the climate transition, but also coming back to what Emma was talking about earlier, what we will see in the coming years is a completely different focus on all the 9 planetary boundaries also. So what will happen if we really think in disruptions and really think in moonshots and in disruptions is that we are placing ourselves in a more in line with the development that it will actually happen. So it will not be super radical. It will be more logical in line with the development that we are likely to see, I think.
Thank you, Rebecca. Logical, not so radical. Well, that might be a bit surprising coming from you, because I tend to always experience you as being wonderfully radical. But I get the point. So, Anders, comments from you, please.
Yes, we are absolutely seeing the change in the market. Some markets are already at the pivot point. Globally, for Volvo cars, we are now 25% electrified. In Europe, it's 40%, and last month in California, we sold 57% battery electrics only. 57%. And California is now switching. It's happening.
Thank you. Thomas?
Yeah, we are 100%.
Like a battle up here, not really on numbers, but you're all headed in the right direction and just side by side.
No, it's. I mean, obviously, we see as well when we discussed markets like America 2 years ago, you would have said, okay, open a dealership in LA and San Francisco, and you cover it. And of course, we see this year we expand into 25 cities already, where we see that even in the US, electrification indeed is a big thing now.
Emma, logical, of course, Emma is, Rebecca is right. This is completely logical.
Of course, it's logical. And we also say, I mean, now it's a discussion about renewable energy in the grid. It's a discussion about energy prices. I think that, of course, it makes sense. And of course, if we just add on the development of the electrification in the grids, build out the systems, make the whole society ready for electrification, it will also make sense from a financial perspective, also for the end consumers, all the end consumers, and then it will also feel logical to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Emma. And Martin, for a final comment.
Oh yeah, it is very good to see now, of course, the electrical vehicles taking away the end pipe emission. That's very important. Then now comes into the embedded carbon. And here we have been waiting for this moment. The steel industry technically has done their homework, so we are now ready to scale this up. And there will be a competition for sure, which is good because the world needs more fossil-free steel. And let's take the risk.
Well, thank you so much. And a final question to Rebecca here. 5 years from now, when we look back, if we will look back, we'll be sort of backcasting from 5 years from now. What will the discussion be then on this topic?
I think we will. One thing in terms of the automotive industry is that we will see so much also disruption of the very type of vehicle. So now we are thinking radically or exponentially around the car, but also we will see so much disruption of how we are transporting ourselves at all. So as Stoteller, for example, chief of Google X, has rightfully asked, how does it make sense for us to use a 3,000-pound vehicle burning dinosaur juice to move a 4-pound pizza across town? So what we will see, of course, is the disruption of vehicles at all. And this will have happened so much in 5 years from now. Not that we will not have cars, but we will have many other more optimized types of vehicles also. And that is also a really interesting discussion or development to follow.
Comments here? We still have a few minutes.
Absolutely. In 2050, 70% of the world's population will live in cities. We experience so much congestion already today. It's just not going to happen that everyone has a car. So you have to share cars. We have started slowly at Volvo with the tests in some Swedish cities, and we find that actually one car-sharing car can replace 8 cars. And that's the potential. It's probably bigger. So car sharing is absolutely for the future. And 5 years out, absolutely, as Rebecca says, that will be much more common.
Thank you very much, all three of you, joining us here on stage in Glasgow. And thank you very much, Rebecca and Emma, joining us remotely. It's been a very exciting discussion here. And what I take with me foremost is the sense of speed and also direction. And the way that you all speak the same language, that is really, really hopeful. And I'm not talking about English, of course. We are really headed in the right direction. And thank you so much for joining us here today. And just keep up the speed. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here in the audience too. Bye-bye.